So we're with the hilarious Alonzo Bodden. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us.
I'm good. I'm good. It's a hot Monday in LA. Looking at the temperature on my screen, it's 100 degrees out.
Oof.
So, yeah, summer's continuing.
Yeah, here in Chicago, it was actually really nice. It was about 75 yesterday. It was a perfect day to go out. It's going to warm up a little bit. I think it's like the last gasp of summer before it starts to cool down. Although it really doesn't cool down all that much in LA, does it?
Yeah, we'll get down with, we just don't know. Sometimes summer ends in September, sometimes October, and then sometimes we get a 90-degree Christmas. But we had rain, they're calling it the hurricane last
Right.
weekend. So, who knows what's going to happen? The end of the world's in about 4 months. So, don't make any long range plans, run up some debt, and then it'll be over.
Well, speaking of running up debt, I know that you were a big motorcycle fan, motorcycle fanatic, I guess I would say. And you've been buying and selling motorcycles for almost 40 years.
Yeah, I get, I don't know if bored is the right word or just I like new bikes, like different bikes. So I'll ride something for a while and then something else will come out and I'll be like, oh, I want to try that. But the past
Uh
year and a half, so a few years ago, I started commuting around LA on a GS, BMW
Okay.
GS, which,
Yeah.
believe it or not, is an unbelievable, great commuting bike. I
Hmm.
say the GS, I tell people the GS handles like an elephant that can dance ballet. It truly is the greatest all around bike. I rode it halfway across the country. I rode it back and forth every day in traffic. It's really fun and a great
Awesome.
bike. I've had two of them over like a 5 or 6 year period. But then I was really liking the BMW RT. It was like a really beautiful bike, nice color, this or that. So
Hmm.
I sold my GS and I sold my Triumph Rocket because I had the first generation Rocket, which was awesome. The
Right.
second generation was a little too refined, if that makes any sense. But
Yeah, totally.
I sold both of them. I got the RT. I hated the RT. The RT, it was kind of a plain, I'm not going to say boring, I'm going to say ordinary ride, but the new BMW electronics and the 10-inch screen and it's like to get on the bike, you had to connect your phone with Bluetooth. Then
Really?
if you wanted navigation, you had to connect with Wi-Fi.
Oh,
And then you
geez.
had to leave your phone on and they had a little pocket you put your phone in and the fan is supposed to it was a pain. And then this is what really drove me crazy. You do all that, takes 5 minutes to take off.
Right.
Then you
Yeah.
stop for gas. Now you got to do it again. It was like no. So I got rid of that bike. Let's see, what did I get and then I just went through a number of bikes that none of them worked for my commuter. I got a BMW XR S1000 XR, which I had one of the first generation, second generation. Again, nothing but
Hmm.
electronic problems. They had to put a new wiring harness on the bike. That bike was junk, so the dealer bought it back. And then I got the R18, which was fun. I got a bobber, but it
Hmm.
was more like a cruiser style bike. So I got that one up for sale now. And ultimately, I ended up on a multi-strata. So now I've got the Pikes Peak Multi, which is awesome. Which is,
Yeah.
adventure bikes are the new do it all bikes. If you want something that does everything, you got to get an adventure bike.
Yeah, they really are. And those usually have a high center of gravity for you. I don't think that's probably much of a problem, is it? Being six
No,
foot
no. I
four.
mean, they're tall, but they're actually the handling on them is really balanced. I mean, the GS because of the boxer engine, the weight's
Hmm.
lower
Right.
than the multi, but the multi is 100% Ducati. It is fast and it
Cool.
handles great. It's not as it doesn't feel as big and planted, like it wouldn't be as good a touring bike as a GS.
Right.
It wouldn't be as good two up as the GS. For big bike things, you want the GS. But for zipping around, for having fun, for canyons, any of that, the Ducati's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you've hit a lot of foreshadowing, I guess we'll call it, because we're going to talk about all that stuff we just brought up in detail. But
Well, we're
first,
done. So it's been a good podcast, and I got
cool.
things to do. I'll see you later.
Well, it's time for a beer. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Gotta go. So, well, just in case anybody doesn't know or hasn't picked up the fact that you're in your day job, you're a comedian. That's probably what people most know you for, correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's I've been doing stand up for 30 years now. My first big break was Just for Laughs in Montreal. Like that's where I got discovered. That's where I became full time. And then, as I tell everyone, I my introduction to America was winning Last Comic Standing. That's when I was on TV and people got to know the name.
Yeah.
And then it's been all the stuff comics do, from late night TV shows, panel comedy shows. I've hosted a couple of shows. I
Hmm.
hosted a show on Speed Channel for a while called 101 Cars You Must Drive, which was a lot of fun. That's the first time a show ever got canceled because they sold the network. They were
Oh,
like, yeah, we
geez.
like the show, but we're shutting down the entire network. So good luck finding another job. And
Thanks for
that was
playing.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you're also a regular now on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR, right?
Yeah, I've been doing that. I've been doing that for like 10 years. And it's fun. It's a news commentary show. It's a perfect fit for comics. And then for the past 2 years, we've been doing live comedy shows, with the Wait Wait comic panelists, and I host those. So that's fun touring around doing those. And then the other thing I do, where it's one of my favorite places where the two worlds intersect, is I do a comedy show every year at Americade,
Hmm.
the touring rally in New York. And
Okay.
that one's really fun because I don't do any comedy material. The whole show is about motorcycles, just
That's
our
cool.
culture, what different people ride, and of course, my favorite all-time Americade comedy moment was meeting the Wild Hogs from Milwaukee, none of which had a Harley. Not one of them had a Harley. They didn't
Love
really
it.
understand what a hog is. You're like, you're from Milwaukee,
Right.
and not one of you. Then they
You could
came
probably
back they came back the next year, and two of them had Indians. I was like, all right, you're getting close.
getting closer. Maybe next year we'll get actual Harley there. Yeah. So, do you actually? So, talking about kind of those worlds colliding, do you see any similarities between riding and either writing or performing comedy?
Well, for me, riding is meditative. So I've come up with comedy bits while I'm on my bike.
Hmm.
There's something about riding that clears my mind, and that's when I create. So that would be the only time they come together. And then, of
Yeah.
course, joking about the fact that the minute you tell someone you ride a motorcycle, their first story is how their friend got killed on a motorcycle. So then I tell them how people got killed in cars or walking, or, it's
Right.
America. So they got shot, because what could be more American?
Right. Well, I'm from outside Chicago, so that joke rings rings home. Every time I tell everybody I'm from Chicago, haven't gotten shot yet. So, well, let's go back to the beginning. So, how long have you been riding? How'd you get started riding motorcycles?
I fell in love with bikes. So my grandmother had a farm in South Carolina,
Okay.
and there was, from the like main highway to the house, there was a dirt road, probably about a mile, 2 miles long, something like that. And
Mhm.
there were these people who rented land from them, and their son had a bike, and this had to be in the late 60s. So I'm guessing it was a Triumph or a BSA. I didn't know anything about bikes back then, but
Sure.
it was a British bike. And he took us for rides up and down that dirt road. And it just, from the first time I did it, I just fell in love with it. There was just something about that feeling. And I tell people I still get that, I still get that feeling when I ride. So, I grew up in New York City, and
Hmm.
obviously there wasn't a big motorcycle culture, and my dad wouldn't let me get a mini bike, but I was just absorb everything, like every motorcycle magazine, mini bike magazine, whatever
Yeah.
I could find, I read, and I love bikes. And I knew I was going to get a bike. And then I went to aviation high school. I got graduated. I got hired by Lockheed
Oh
in
wow.
Burbank. And I was like, oh, I'm headed to LA. I'm
Sure.
getting a bike. And that's when I was 18. I bought my first bike. It was a Honda 404.
Okay.
And that started it.
And you haven't looked back since.
Have not looked back since. It's been a ton of bikes and even more money, and not one regret.
That's
Hey, was there
I,
a regret? Let me think. Nah, I really honestly can't think of now there've been a couple of bikes that didn't last long, but I can't say regret.
Sure.
Somewhere I read never regret anything that made you smile. So,
I like
yeah.
that. Yeah. And sometimes really you don't know what a bike's like until you spend some time on it. You know, you really get to know it.
Yeah,
Sometimes it takes,
there's no 2 or 3 day test rides.
right.
So you're literally well, some people will keep the bike,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I'm not going to keep something I'm not enjoying. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like I get it, and believe me, owning a bike for a week is expensive.
Right.
Now, I will say that the bike dealers, I dealt with a couple and they knew me. So they were kind of cool about my trade-ins. They'd sell me something. They're
Okay.
like, yeah, this will be back soon. We'll keep the space open.
We'll just give it, we know you, we'll give it a try. So,
Hmm.
so what was it like? I mean, learning at 18, bought a bike, you're riding in Southern California, you know, back then it probably, I mean, I know traffic's probably only gotten worse, but I can't imagine it was open roads then either. So what was that like learning to ride in that
Well,
arena?
so I've been doing some work with the Motorcycle Safety Foundation and
Okay.
the training classes and stuff. And I tell them,
Yeah.
I learned back when you bought the bike, they said, this is the clutch, this is the brake, this is the throttle, this is the shifter. If you make it home alive, you're a motorcycle rider. And that's what you did. You just got out there.
Yeah.
But I compare riding in LA to playing a giant game of Frogger.
Okay.
And I think probably the best advice I got, and I don't remember who told me, but somebody told me early on, they said, ride like they're out to kill you. And
Yep.
I've never let go of that. Like, yeah, you got to keep your head on a swivel. What's gotten worse, what's made it so much worse,
Mhm.
are cell phones.
Oh yeah.
Cell phones and iPads. I mean,
Yep.
in LA, you just assume you learn things, right? If they're in a Tesla, they're not driving. The car's on autopilot.
Yep.
If they're in a large SUV, they don't see you because
Right.
they don't care. Like when the big SUV thing became a thing, probably in the
Hmm.
early 2000s, what they told every soccer mom was, hey, this truck is super safe for your kids. What they didn't tell them is this is a truck, not a car. It's big, it's slow, it doesn't turn. But so they'd be driving them and they're not paying attention to anything because they're in a tank. They're like, I
Right.
can hit, and the dealer told me I could hit anything and I'll be fine. So as a motorcyclist, you have to be aware of that. Now, I will say, and this is a very interesting thing that's happened. California is the only place it's still legal to split lanes,
Right.
and we do it all the time. People are more conscious and nicer to us lane splitting now than they were in
Hmm.
the 80s. Back in the
Really?
80s, when you split lanes, people would cut in, like try to hit you or try to block you, like they were mad that
Jeez.
you were progressing. But
Yeah.
now, people, it's the other way. People, when they notice you, will tend to part a little, just a little, just
Hmm.
enough to let you go through. So that part is cool. But yeah, you got to keep your head on a swivel. And the other thing I tell everyone is you have to live through your 20s, right? Because in your
Sure.
20s, in anything you do in your 20s, you're an idiot and you're indestructible, right? So
I could agree to
I
that. Yeah.
learned the hard way like anyone else. I was passing someone on the right. Someone turned into me. I went down. I broke my
Ooh.
wrist. My helmet saved my life. Like my helmet had the divot in it of the corner of the curb, so that's what my head hit. So if I didn't have a helmet on, I'd have been dead that day.
Yeah.
Uh, Needless to say, I'm a strong believer in helmets, real helmets, not plastic caps that show how tough you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta, your 20s, and I don't even get mad like stunters and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I wish they wouldn't, but at that age, it's what people do. And some of them, the thing about stunters and riding crews, you see the Rough Riders, they rode with them a little. I wasn't a member, but I knew
Sure.
people in the guys and the women, the people at the front of the pack.
Hmm.
Some of them are incredible. They know how to ride, and some of them are actually incredible riders. The middle and the back of the pack will get you killed.
Really?
They're just not that good. And they're trying to keep up. See, they're riding over their head. Like,
I got you.
I
Yeah. They're not riding their own ride.
Now, I have friends who are track junkies.
Hmm.
Those guys are so fast. Like you hit a canyon, they just walk away. And what you learn is let them walk away. One of
Sure
the
thing.
guys, he's really funny, a guy named Danny Coe, who I haven't seen Danny in a while, but Danny was a pro. Danny raced with Freddie Spencer back in the 80s or whatever.
Wow. Okay.
He rides a Honda Hawk, the 600, 650, whatever it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
older Hawk.
Hmm.
You cannot keep up with Danny. You'll never see his brake light. He's incredibly smooth and super fast, and it's funny because he plays with the squids who have the latest Gixxer or R1 or whatever, and they're like, this old man is on a 650, and it's like, yeah, good luck with that. Good
Yeah.
luck keeping up with
And he
that old
just
man.
sails away. He probably makes it look super easy too. That's probably the most
Unbelievably
frustrating thing.
easy.
Yeah.
Unbelievably easy.
Yeah. Well, talking about the canyons and all that, I mean, if you've never been to Southern California, the access to so much different terrain is just unmatched. You know, you've got the city driving if you want to do that in lane split. You can go up into the mountains. You can go a little bit farther west into the desert or south into the desert. You can go to Baja if you really want to. I mean, what's it like being able to kind of pick wherever you want to ride in those beautiful areas, and what
Well,
what kind is your favorite?
we're spoiled. We're
Yeah.
unbelievably spoiled.
Yeah.
10 minutes from me is the intersection of Topanga and Mulholland. So that just starts literally some of the greatest riding in America, if not in the world. We
Yeah.
we have the most beautiful canyons, and you ride through the canyons and you end up on the coast highway. So we have to suffer through that, right? And then you can go north to Monterey and
Hmm.
whatever you want, or you go south to San Diego, and so we're spoiled. We're spoiled.
Yeah.
It's funny. You live in Chicago. I have a friend in Chicago,
Hmm.
and she rides. And she asked me one time because she had to. It was the first time she had to put her bike away for the winter. It was like
Oh yeah.
October, and they
Yeah.
take them to the dealer, and the dealer winterize. And she said, "What do you do with your bike in the winter?" I was like, "I ride it." you know and then she cussed me out.
Right. She
So
realized.
we're spoiled in that sense. I mean, when I did the Tail of the Dragon, right, because I
Hmm.
had a gig in Knoxville, and I said,
Okay.
let me rent a bike and do this because everyone talks about it.
Yeah.
And the Dragon was fun, but I had to say, like, well, we have better roads than this,
Sure.
in Southern Cal. I mean,
Yeah.
the problem with the Dragon is you have a bunch of people, a bunch of tourists on it that don't know what they're doing. And, it's like we have roads where you just won't see another car or bike or whatever when you get out there in the morning. Now we have some bad ones and some this and that. So, but
Sure.
the great thing about riding in LA is you can ride in three different directions
Hmm.
and in 30 minutes not know LA exists,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
That's it's
it's a
incredible.
beautiful beautiful thing. So you can do that ride to clear your head in the afternoon. You don't have
Hmm.
to. In a lot of parts of the country you have to go somewhere. I did Black Bike Week in Myrtle Beach.
Oh yeah.
I had some stuff on the East Coast. So
Okay.
what I did, I bought a bike. I bought a Valkyrie Tourer because I'm a big fan
Okay.
of power cruisers. Love the Valkyrie.
Yeah.
I shipped it to North Carolina or South Carolina. I did the Black Bike Week. Then I rode up the coast. I got to ride the Blue Ridge Mountain Parkway,
Beautiful.
and I went to Americade up in New
Yeah.
York. So and
Yeah.
then I came home and I sold the bike. Like basically, I just bought the
Oh
bike to
wow.
do
Okay.
that East Coast tour.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was when I was in Myrtle Beach, because remember the East Coast, they don't have corners. They're all drag racers. So they
You're
all
right.
ride the big fat tire Hayabusas and
Yep.
um cowies and stuff like that. So the entrance ramps on the highway, I'd be on a Valkyrie and I'm passing the R1s like they're sitting and I was just laughing. I was like, that's right. None of you turn. And a buddy of mine, a guy named Nick Anglada, who built the most beautiful Ducati street fighter out of my 1098 after I high-sided it. By the way,
Hmm.
I high-sided the 1098. Nick had no interest in how I was. He wanted the bike. He was like, is the bike running? Send it to me.
You're still
But
alive,
Nick,
right? Okay, cool. Well, yeah.
yeah, no, he didn't even ask that. He just said send the bike.
Wow.
But
Okay.
Nick used to build those big fat tire Japanese bikes, and he said to me, he said,
Oh
"Listen,
yeah.
we're in Florida. We only have one turn at the top. You make a left and go to Georgia."
Yeah. Yeah, that's about it. You go right and you go to Georgia, you go left, you go through the panhandle.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's more like there's not even really turns. It's kind of just like gliding one direction or another, you know. So
exactly. So living in Southern California, listen, we pay for it, but we do get to enjoy it.
yeah, I always tell people the first time when I went to California and I left, I was in Southern California, San Diego area, that whole thing. And I go, man, this place is beautiful, but everybody knows it.
Yeah, yeah, everybody
Everybody knows
knows
it.
it. But
Yeah.
again, once you get out of town and see, being a comic,
Hmm.
I'm on the opposite schedule of everybody, right? So
Oh
I
yeah.
work on the weekend, but I could ride during the day during the week when the
Right.
roads are empty. There's nobody there because,
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to
people
worry
in the
about rush
real
hour or
world are
anything like
working.
that. Yeah.
Right. So in that sense it's kind of fun. And I've never been a big group rider. I like riding alone. I got a few friends I ride with, but I've never been a big fan of big group rides. I've never been a member of a club or
Sure.
anything like that. It's not my scene.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and that's the cool thing with motorcycling is you can make it a solo affair, you can make it a big group thing, or you can go to these meetups like Americade. Let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me all about Americade, how you got involved in it. What's it
So
all about?
Americade, well, I guess historically, Americade started out as a big gold wing rally. I
Okay.
guess back in I don't even know when, the 80s maybe,
Okay.
when the gold wings really became touring bikes,
Hmm.
when they started coming from Honda as a factory touring bike with a fairing and bags and stuff.
Right.
People don't know, but the original gold wings were all naked, and you had to buy all that stuff yourself and put it on. So
I didn't know
anyway,
that. Wow. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Oh, the history of the gold wings fascinating. They originally built it to be a super bike in comparison to the 754.
Okay.
That was
Yeah,
the
I could see that.
and then what happened was people kind of made it into a touring bike. They were like, "This bike's great. I'm riding it across country," and everyone
Yeah.
started doing it. And then Honda was like, "Oh, okay, we'll build it that way." But anyway,
Sure.
so Americade started out as this touring rally. I guess it kicks off the summer in the
Okay.
Northeast. It's up in Lake George, New York, and they get over, I guess, a week long period 20 to 30,000.
Wow.
Probably
Okay.
20,000. I don't know. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
And
That's a chunk of people.
yeah, so years ago, 8, 9 years ago, Christian, the guy who runs it, he called me and he said, "Hey, man, I know you like motorcycles. We have this big rally. You want to come in and do a show?" So
Hmm.
I was like, "Yeah, why not? Sure." So I went there and I went in not knowing what I'm gonna do, and I just started joking. But when you get there, you see there's a BMW group, there's a Honda group, there's a Harley group, and there's
Really?
other. You just see it. So I started joking about like the BMW guys who are the guys who, if you don't do 300 miles before breakfast, you're not really riding, right? And then the Gold Wings, it's how many lights can I put on my bike and my matching trailer. And
Right.
the Harleys, it's all about polishing. I said every morning they had to polish the darkness off, and the Harleys come from 50 miles away in a trailer, so it just became a bunch of jokes like that and joking
Yeah,
with
yeah,
people
yeah.
because everyone's in the culture and everyone knows. And then the manufacturers are there with demo bikes, right?
Okay.
BMW, Harley, and
Yeah.
Indian, and all of them are there.
Hmm.
And I got to know them, and they were like, "Well, you don't, because I'd fly in because I'm from LA." They're like, "Well, you want to borrow a bike while you're here?" And they would lend me bikes, and I could
Oh,
do
cool.
rides while I was there, and it just became a thing. So I love it now. I'm just a part of it, and it's big fun. I did ride one year. I rode. I took the time to ride because I always wanted to ride across country, and now I
Yeah.
had the destination. And I always say that that's one of the few things I've done in my life that exceeded any expectations. It was
Really?
just such a great ride. I did the middle of the country,
Okay.
Highway 50 and I-70, like you
Yeah.
kind of jump back and forth. But what I was
Sure.
doing was because people were like, "Are you going to be all right? You're going to be safe?" I'm like, "I'm on a year-old BMW touring bike and I have credit cards. I'll be fine. This isn't. It's not 1925. Then nothing's going to happen, you know."
Right.
And
Right.
my thing was ride to the end of every major. Like when I'd stop, I would pass the major city so
Okay.
that the next morning I didn't have to deal with traffic.
That's
That
smart.
was my strategy, and I
That's
think
super smart.
it took me about 5 or 6 days, but it was just a great ride. And every night I would catch up to the rain. There was a rainstorm. I'm going across country. Well, no,
Yeah.
it was great for me because being from LA, I never ride in the rain.
Oh
And I
yeah.
never
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
learned to ride in the rain. And if you
Yeah.
need to ride in the rain, do it on a BMW because it's something about the bike. The bike was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Let's go." And it was really, but it was educational for me. And then the worst part, and this might have been the worst ride, the most miserable ride I ever did.
Yeah.
I had to cross from Pennsylvania to the Jersey Turnpike across the George Washington Bridge in the pouring rain.
Oh boy.
Miserable, slippery, blind. It was
Yeah.
crazy, but I'm glad I did it. I would never do it again.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things where you look back and like, I'm glad I have that experience, but now I have the wisdom to like just wait it out or just stay away from it completely. So,
Right. Yeah. The George
um,
Washington Bridge is not motorcycle friendly.
does it have the grates on the bottom?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which are fun in the rain.
Oh God, I can't. They're not even fun in the dry. I mean, I was when you go into Chicago from like you take I-290 into Chicago, you go like through over the bridge and under the post office and everything, and those grates are always there. And it's like anytime you ride in, it's like you're just handlebars are shaking. You just got to let it go. So I can't even imagine what that's like in the rain. So and in New
Chicago,
York where and all that. So
I've ridden in Chicago and they have that weird upper and lower whacker drive
oh yeah,
thing is
yeah.
just weird. Because once you're on lower whacker, you die down there. There's no way to get back up to the. You're looking at people above you and like, how do you get up there? And they're like, you don't. You live down here now forever.
Yeah, that's Chicago's purgatory, basically, because there's no cell service, so you can't get GPS. You got to just kind of take it as it goes, and then once you see daylight, that's where you got to kind of end up that way. So, but it's one of those things where if you know how to navigate it at least a little bit, you can bypass so much of the city to go everywhere, and it is cool on a bike. I've done it once or twice.
Well, yeah, I was with a local rider and they were telling me,
Okay.
yeah, this is where we go to ride. It's fun. And it was fun riding down there. You just don't know where you are, but it is like open and kind of,
Yeah.
for a city ride, it's a fun place to be.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so would you say that's probably your biggest trip, or have you kind of done a bigger kind of
Well,
trip than that?
that was my biggest trip, but I've been lucky enough to do some great rides. I was in Sydney, Australia. And again,
Really?
when you put it out there that you're a rider, people reach out to you. So I did a
Hmm.
show down there and I was talking about motorcycles and this motorcycle dealership, they were funny. They called me and they said, if you mention our dealership on the show, we'll give you a bike while you're here. And I was like, well, I want to thank Sydney, blah, blah, blah. And then they have an equivalent to the Coast Highway that kind of goes around Sydney and the base of Australia. And
Okay. Wow.
I got to ride that. That was beautiful. That was fun. Um, yeah, it's so I've had some rides, but obviously going across the country, I mean, that's the longest one.
Yeah.
And I still want one day, I guess it's a bucket list thing, is to ride in Europe, do the
Yeah.
Alps or one of those tours where they take you through the European mountains and stuff. That's bucket list.
Yeah. Same here. Same here on that one. Talking about rides though, too. You've also you've been to Sturgis. Have you done that once, twice? Do you do that regularly, or?
So again, you hear things and then you find out how true it is. So I've been
Right.
going to Americade and I've been to a bunch of MotoGP races and different
Right.
events. And some guy said, listen, once in your life, you have to do Sturgis. There's
Hmm.
no way to describe it. You just have to go. So the Indian invited me. I had a friend who worked PR for Indian,
Okay.
and they invited me, and the guy was absolutely right. You can. I don't know if you've been.
I have not, but it's on the
Okay,
list.
you have to go, and there's
Hmm.
no way to describe the scale of Sturgis. It's bigger and there are more bikes than anything you could imagine. And I went on a regular year when there was like 400,000, on their
Oh my
big
God.
years like that. I don't know,
Yeah.
they recently had their 50th anniversary or whatever it was, and they had like 700,000. But when we
Wow.
got there, let's see, we flew into, I want to say Rapid City, because it's three
Okay.
cities. It's Rapid City, it's
Hmm.
Sturgis, and it's Deadwood.
Okay.
It fills all three cities. And when I say
Wow.
fills, I mean people pay to camp out on people's lawns. Everything, there's just everything.
Yeah. Every
And
square inch
it,
of real estate. Yeah.
yeah, and this woman the woman who picked us up from the airport and took us to pick up the bike, she said, yeah, for 3 weeks, we have more motorcycles than cows. She said, normally we have more cows than people. For 3 weeks, we have more. And there are businesses that their entire year is Sturgis. Like they open up for those 3 weeks and then they shut
Wow.
down until the following year. But the people were cool. It's not like the old days where it was, biker gangs and fights. And so like
One percenters. Yeah.
the Hells Angels had a t-shirt shop, which me and my buddy Alan found incessantly funny. And
My, how times have changed.
the other thing, let's just say there's not a large black population. So Alan and I, particularly Alan and I, we were there for the first, like we got there right at the start.
Yeah.
And, we were laughing and joking about it, but the people were nice and they were welcoming. And one guy even
Sure.
said, man, it's good to see you guys here. And we knew exactly what he meant, but they were all cool. But, the riding is beautiful. They have the Black Hills and you can go to Mount Rushmore
Oh yeah.
is, I think, an hour or 2 hour ride away. Not far. We did go. I do remember going. I don't remember how
Yeah.
far it was, but it's more just the volume and you see things at Sturgis you will not see anywhere else. Like we rode past a bikini bike wash, and when we stopped, we were like, "Do you see it? Yeah, I saw it. Do you see it? Yeah. What do you think?" We were like, "I don't know, 7 months, 8 months." There was a pregnant woman in the bikini
Oh
washing
my
Harleys. We were like,
God.
only at Sturgis.
And
But
that probably wasn't the only bikini bike wash either. There was probably one on the other side
no,
of
no.
it.
There are a lot of people anxious to get naked that you probably don't want to see naked. The hot girls and the posters that you see, yeah, they're not there. They're
Right.
not there. It's
Well, it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like bikini car or bike washes aside, it's still worth the experience to go just to kind of see it.
no, it's something to see, and obviously it's so dominated by Harley. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
actually, the American motorcycle scene is so dominated by Harley. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like when you go to Sturgis, you're like, okay, so if you have a black street glide, how do you
Hmm.
find it? How do you
Yeah.
just like I went to MotoGP, I went to Valencia in Spain.
Okay.
In
Yeah. Yeah.
Europe,
Yeah.
MotoGP is bigger than anything. There's 100,000 people that go to MotoGP, and it's the
Wow.
same thing. It's like, okay, I have a blue R1. Yeah, good luck. Good luck. I think you're gonna have to wait till everyone leaves.
Yeah.
Because it's a sea. It's a sea of sport bikes, and as you
Yeah.
know. The color palette's limited. If you have a Honda, it's red. If you have a Yamaha, it's blue. If you have a Kawasaki, it's green.
Yep.
And if you have a Suzuki, it's blue and white. And try to find it.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, and
That,
Ducatis, red Ducatis.
Ducatis are
Yeah.
red. Yeah. Yeah. That's gotta be fun to watch racing, especially because you've done racing. You kind of have a history of a little bit of track days back in the day, right?
Well, the great thing about doing track days and racing is you get to ride on the same track that the pros ride on.
Right.
And then you look at your lap time and you look at their lap time and you honestly wonder what you were doing. You wonder, was my bike running? Was that? Um, Racers, any level of racer, is an incredible rider.
Hmm.
MotoGP riders, they call them aliens for a reason. It
Yeah.
really is. It's a whole, I mean, they're so good. I did Freddie Spencer's class a long time
Okay.
ago, and
Yeah.
he takes you for a lap on the back of a bike. At that time, it was a VFR. They're what they can do on a bike. It's just you can't even describe it. Same with Ricky Gatson, the drag racer. I
Oh
got to
yeah.
know Ricky, and I was with Ricky in Indy when he was doing Lucas drags.
Hmm.
And we're talking just like you and me are talking. We're talking like this. And Ricky said, "Hey man, can you grab my helmet a minute? Follow me." So I grab his helmet. He goes over. He's like, "All right." He jumps on his bike and he drops like a 7-second quarter mile, and he's
Oh
like
geez.
the quickest qualifier of the day. And then he picks up the conversation. I'm like, "Did that just happen? Did you just go out and humiliate everyone here mid conversation? Like then pick up with it's yeah, people like
Yeah.
that. It's professionals in anything, but when they're doing something you do and you get to see the difference in talent,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun. You can't help but admire how incredible they are at what they do. And they're nice guys. I knew Nicky Hayden when he was alive. He was a friend of a friend, and I got to talk to
Hmm.
him some. And
Yeah.
he's a nice guy. He's just, but he has this extraordinary talent.
He does what he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those people can, yeah, I'll be right back. I got to do something. And then they just come back like it's nothing.
Yeah.
But
Aliens.
yeah.
Aliens.
Yeah. So you said you used to do track days a little bit. You don't anymore. Um, uh, can you kind of just give me the quick story behind that? Was that just, what
You
was
mean
kind of your
behind me not
experience?
doing track days or the experience of doing them?
Well,
No,
both actually.
it's fantastic. It's very intimidating the first time you do it.
Hmm.
And then you do it, like you get there early, you put your leathers on, you go out. It's completely different than being on the street. Like they said, everyone's going in the same direction and there's no cops, and but you do learn it. I think the hardest thing to do is learn step by step. You want to make these big jumps, and I've
Right.
low sided. I've crashed and getting over my head. Or one time I missed a corner, I hit that little curb thing, and I've had a couple
Yeah.
of mishaps. But anyway, but you do get better lap by lap, and you learn things. Probably the biggest thing is braking.
Okay.
You can brake so much harder. Like you think you're braking, and then you learn from people. And there are people there who will help you. There are coaches, there are
Hmm.
pros, there are more experienced riders.
Right.
You When you learn how hard you could brake, and it feels good. Like when you're going into a turn and you're braking so hard, you're not doing a stoppie, but the rear is coming up just because you're braking that hard for the
Wow.
turn. And you
Yeah.
feel good about it. And then you keep going around, you keep practicing doing the same corners, and you
Hmm.
feel yourself getting better at doing that corner. And then the first time the knee touches down, you're like, man,
That's
I
got to
just
be
dragged
cool.
a knee, and that
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, so that is all. It's all very cool, and all the talk stops. On the street, there's
Right.
a lot of you talk a lot of smack. I could do this, I do that, blah 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 blah. But when you're on the track, it's like it's not a race. But anybody who's talking smack when they get out there, you see if they really can ride. And like anything else, the ones who do it the best don't talk about it. I will tell you this: if you go to a track day and you see some guy in some taped up leathers with a bike that has plastic on it that's been glued back together, don't mess with him. He is fast. He is
Yeah.
the guy on the new Ducati with the perfect leathers and the new boots. Don't worry about him. You ride past him easy. That guy with if the knee pucks are taped on, you just call him sir or you call her ma'am, because
Right.
there are women out there. Oh, don't sleep. There are women out there that will smoke you on the track.
I
They
believe it.
I love it. I love it too. But there, yeah, if you see knee pucks taped on, you don't mess with that person. You show them some respect.
Yeah. You learn where the pecking order is real fast.
Mhm.
Um, so you said earlier, you went down on the street. You've had a couple mishaps on the track. Kind of a two-part question, I guess. One, did you ever have any second thoughts after, laying it down about maybe hanging it up from there and being done riding, or has that
No,
never crossed
no,
your mind? No.
never even crossed my mind. Here's the thing: gear. It's all about gear.
Sure.
You got to have good quality. You can't spend too much on your riding gear.
Agreed.
The times I got hurt, well, like I said, the first time I broke my wrist was just me being a stupid kid. When I high sided and I broke my wrist, and I do believe if I had a better glove with a better gauntlet on it,
Hmm.
I might have been okay, but I don't know because the way it broke, I landed on top of my wrist. So I don't know
Ooh.
that a glove would have helped with that. But I will tell you this, and I've seen it. You don't want to slide in cheap leather. You don't want to slide in a cheap jacket. There's a reason that the top of the line stuff costs that much. I remember we were doing a ride. They used to have a ride here called the Love Ride in LA,
Hmm.
and there was some guy up there. Leno used to lead the ride, and he said, "Yeah, there he is. There he is. What did he say? $1,000 helmet protecting a $10 head. Yeah, that's the way you want it. You don't want a $10 helmet protecting $1,000 head.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would, but I've never, no, I've never had that. I won't ride again. I have one friend who that happened to because he got blindsided by a car on the freeway and he was just
Oof.
shaky.
Hmm.
Now I will say that after I high sided on the track, it was
Hmm.
very hard to open the throttle on the track again.
Hmm.
That was stayed in my head. But now technology also helps, right? So now you have traction control, which kind of stops you from high siding, and anti-lock brakes,
Yep.
and airbags in the suit. Recently I have a
Oh
friend,
yeah.
and this is the worst. Got hurt really bad, cracked a few ribs, broke his collarbone because he
Hmm.
didn't have his airbag on, and he had airbag leathers, but he didn't. And that was like that's the worst because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would have saved him those injuries. But yeah, now they have that, and I think if I did a track day now, I'd want airbag leathers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd take it all, take as much
Hmm.
advantage as you can have and safety equipment and,
Yeah.
traction control, ABS. I'll take it all, man. So,
Now I'm guilty of riding on the street at times underdressed.
hmm,
I've done the cruiser ride in a vest and stuff like
sure.
that. And if I get hurt, then I'm an idiot, and it's no
Yeah.
one's fault but mine. But
Yeah.
yeah. But when you're on the track or when you're doing any kind of hard riding, you got to wear the gear.
Yeah.
That's what makes a difference.
Yeah. So what have you, obviously not hanging up the towel, but what have you learned from those crashes or those high sides in terms of riding? Has it kind of taught you anything? Did it kind of give
Yeah,
you a
you
reality
definitely
check
learn
or?
things. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, I high sided because I gave it too much throttle coming out of a corner. That it
Hmm.
was very simple. It was 100% my fault.
Hmm.
I think you learn about braking and traction, paying attention. Um, One of the things you learn so I've never had the crash of target fixation, but I've seen it.
Okay. Yeah.
Where you go where you look. And
100%.
riding on a track, you learn to look up and look way ahead of you because once you're in a corner, it's too late. You're not, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like you can't fix that when you're in it. So look at the
Right.
next one. So things like that. But yeah, the slides and crashes I had again. One of them was because I hit the corner. I turned in too soon, and my foot peg hit the corner of the tiger tail. The red and white strip.
Oh
It
yeah.
has like it has like a right angle corner where it starts. It didn't start gradually. On some tracks, it starts gradually. This one just and my peg hit that and it threw me
Oof.
down.
Hmm.
And another time, just going too fast, and just rode through the corner into the grass and slid
Hmm.
out. And then the high side, which, like I said, I just got on the throttle too, and then I shut the throttle off. If I could have stayed with the bike sliding, I probably would have been all right. Which is
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
thing you learn in dirt riding. Dirt riders learn to slide a motorcycle. I've always been
Hmm.
a street rider, so I never learned that. They said that's what made Nikki Hayden and Casey Stoner so great because they came from dirt track. So they
Yeah.
would slide their MotoGP bike through a turn, and people would be like, "What the hell are you doing?" But that's what they were used to. So
Yeah. Well, I've seen that you are a better dirt track rider than Jay Leno. There's
Yes,
video evidence of that.
yes, yes.
You've been on Jay Leno's garage a couple times. I mean, that guy's made you do a lot of weird stuff.
So Jay and Jay's the greatest.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to consider him a buddy. And this,
Mhm.
so Jay, whenever Jay had a weird bike for Leno's garage, he would give me a call. That was his thing. It's like, oh, this is a weird ass bike. What's Alonzo doing? So we did the dirt track class, which that was fun, and I
Yeah.
also did Colin Edwards' dirt track class. I'm not really good at it, but I'm not bad at it. But yes, I did legitimately beat Jay. And then they had me. They told me, okay, go crash. We need video of you crashing. And I was like, all right, you know.
Yeah.
So I did that. We raced. This was so much fun and so stupid. We raced Urals. For those who don't know,
Oh,
a
geez.
Ural is a two-wheel drive sidecar bike. I forget where they're made. They're made somewhere in Europe, Eastern
I think
Europe.
they're Russian.
They were Russian design. I don't think they're made in Russia. It was a
Oh,
Russian
okay.
design, but I don't
Okay.
think. But anyway, the funny thing about them is they have two-wheel drive, but no differential.
Oh, geez.
So in other words, when you put it in two-wheel drive, the bike's wheel and the sidecar wheel are turning at the same speed, right?
Yeah.
So you can't turn.
No.
Because what a lot of people don't realize, when you turn, your wheels are moving at a different speed, and that's what the differential allows.
Mm-hmm.
So with these, you could, if you were in two-wheel drive, you turn the bars, it's just going to plow straight ahead. So Leno's people have this brilliant idea of, we're going to take these 1940 something design sidecar bikes around a motocross track and race.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious and it was fun. And yes, I did beat Jay. And then another time we had a bike with a barbecue grill on the side.
Right.
And we rode around LA cooking hamburgers while we ride. Like, you stop at the light, you got to jump off the bike, open the grill, flip the burger, then get back on the bike and go. Yeah, it was hilarious and fun. And I asked,
oh, go ahead.
well, you know, he had Fishburne on, and they tested like this new BMW street bike, track bike, whatever. And I was like, so how come I don't do that? And he was like, because you don't star in movies. I was like, fair enough, fair enough.
At least he's honest, I guess, right? Is there anything that he came up with or his people came up with where you're like, I'm not doing that? Anything just too crazy, or no? You just
whatever they do, it's going to be fun, and I'm up for it.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, Alonzo, you seem like the most eclectic guy when it comes to motorcycles and riding. You'll do anything.
The only thing I did, and I did this. So Triumph, and again, I'm incredibly lucky, right? Because of my career in entertainment and the stuff I do.
Sure.
I get invited to do stuff, you know. So Triumph invited me to ride the adventure bike, the Explorer, in Portugal.
Wow.
And they had an off-road adventure class. And I've never been an off-road guy. Like I said, I grew up doing street bikes and everything else.
Same.
So the adventure part was fun, but what I learned is it's not really my thing. And it's no knock against it. It's fun, but like, I have no desire to be out in the dirt and mud. And a Honda demo took me out there too on their what is it? The Africa Twin.
Oh yeah.
They took me out there too. Not as extreme. The Portugal one was more extreme.
Yeah.
But I kind of learned like, nope, not my thing. And again, good for them. You know, it's fun and people love it. Not my thing.
Yeah.
I owned a Harley for well over a day. And that was, you know, I deal with a place called Pro Italia. They handle Ducati and MV and this and that. And I love Ducatis and Aprilias. So he had this old Harley Fat Boy that someone had traded in. It had a supercharger on it.
Okay.
So now, if you know what a Fat Boy is, it's twice as fat now because it's got this big supercharger hanging off it. And I have this bike shop I deal with. So I went there. I said, hey, man, how about we put a fat back tire on this to match the engine?
Right.
And then they're like, well, okay, what if we polish the wheel to match the supercharger? well, we had to paint the back. What if we, and so I was like, okay, so this is going to be a custom bike. They were like, yeah, we're going to get it in a magazine. And they finished it and it got in a magazine and I rode it and I was like, this ain't me at all. Go ahead and sell it. So I had it, I had it for 2 days.
Yeah.
And, but the Harley thing is a culture and a world unto itself. I get
Oh,
it.
for sure. Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever be part of it. I
Hmm.
get it. I like the Road Glide. I've ridden the Road Glide. The new Harleys. This is what this is. If you're Harley Davidson, I
Hmm.
think this is the hardest thing about your business. Your hardcore customers don't like you improving the product.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you've ever ridden an old Harley, the first Harley I rode was in the '90s, which isn't super old.
Hmm.
No brakes. I mean, the brakes hardly worked. It shook to hell, this or that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So now they're actually really modern and they're really well made bikes. And I was riding one with another friend on a demo, and we went to the Rock Store, which is our famous bike hangout here in LA. And you had
Okay.
all these old Harley guys saying, man, that ain't a real Harley. That ain't a real Harley. Because it worked, right? Because the
Right.
brakes worked and it didn't leak. And you're
Right.
like, man, how do you deal with that when you're like Harley was bragging about 4 valves per cylinder like 5 years ago. And it's like, oh, welcome to the 80s. Like
Right.
that's when 4 valves per cylinder was a new thing in 1980 something. So it's a strange culture. And again, I get it. It's not my thing. I don't look good in assless chaps. That's just and not gonna happen.
Right.
But
Right.
God bless them because it's the biggest culture, it's the biggest motorcycle culture in the world. But
Yeah.
it's just not my thing. So, although I will say this new Battle of the Baggers racing, I don't know if you
Oh,
watched
yeah.
any of it, but it's just fun to watch because they're racing bikes that should not be raced, and that's what
They're
makes
not
it fun.
designed for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was up at Road America, the Road America races up in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin.
Hmm.
And that was pretty cool to see. Those guys are doing wild stuff with those bikes. So,
Yeah. Hmm. And
well,
the racers there say that all the Harley people show up, so that's another surprise to the people who are used to the full leathers racing style people.
yeah.
Now there's a bunch of Harley people showing up in that style. They're like, wait a minute, you in the right place?
Well, and that's interesting because it seems like, you know, and you've been riding a little bit longer than I have, but it seems like, the culture of motorcycling is almost gelling together. Like there is obviously segments of different riders, but it seems like there's this kind of inclusivity of like, hey, as long as you ride, no matter what you do, I'm gonna respect what you do and you enjoy it. We're all riders. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's
No,
still segmented?
I don't agree, and it's
Okay.
unfortunate. It's
Okay.
unfortunate. It should be that way. Like people have asked me, man, you should do a motorcycle show. There should be a motorcycle show on TV. Let
Hmm.
me tell you why there's not a motorcycle show on TV. Because the sport bike guys think it should be a sport bike show. And the stunters, and Jason did have a stunt show on for a while, which was,
Hmm.
pretty good. And so altogether, motorcycles make up maybe what, 2% of what's on the road?
Sure.
5% if I'm being super generous.
Sure.
And within that 5%, each one has its own 1% that they want to claim. Television is a mass market business. They
Right.
want eyes. They want eyes on the show. So it's like, no, it's because you're not going to get enough people watching. Unfortunately, that's why you don't have a show because TV looks at numbers. And it's really funny. Yeah, that you have the Harley people who don't want to deal with anyone else. And then you have the, dirt bike people and they have their world and
Hmm.
motocross or whatever so yeah, we're all splintered. There is some crossover but not near as much. I mean, listen, I had a Grom for a few years, a little Honda 125. There was
Yeah.
nothing more fun than riding a Grom. No place more fun than the Grom ruckus hangouts. Like they would show up and there'd be hundreds of these little bikes and people thought nothing of putting $10,000 into customizing their
Wow.
Grom, just little badass little bike. But they loved the bike and they loved
Right.
riding, and that
Hmm.
was to me, that was cooler than having a $50,000 custom that you just look at and you sit on it and look down on people who actually ride. So unfortunately, no, we're too splintered
Yeah.
uh, to this day. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Well, have you seen any positive changes in like the motorcycle culture over your years of
Women,
riding? Yeah.
women, women, women are riding their own bikes. I love it.
Yeah.
I
Same
love
here.
it.
It's cool.
That's cool. The other thing that's happening probably in the last 4 years, well, let's take away the pandemic years when nothing happened, although it was the greatest riding in the world because no one was on the highway and
Yeah.
motorcycles are naturally socially distant. You're wearing a
Right.
helmet and no one's around you.
Right.
But smaller bikes are catching on. People are riding these little 300cc bikes, and
Yeah.
they're starting out small, which is great because now they're learning to ride. There was a time when people were starting out with 600s, which is kind of a lot for a starter bike. The worst was when people couldn't wait to buy the fastest bike they saw in a magazine.
Oh yeah.
And this guy, a friend of mine, he had a multi-line dealer. He did Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki. And he said, yeah, I can sell you the back half of any bike. Because they would ride
Yeah.
them and crash in it. He said they don't know how to stop. They only know how to
Right.
open the throttle. So they'll ride it into the back of a bus and I'll sell you the rear wheel.
Yikes. Yeah, my dad used to work at a Yamaha store for a little while, and they'd have people come in and they'd want to buy the R1s or whatever, or even the R7s from back in the day, and they'd want to ride it home and they wouldn't make it out of the parking lot. They just whip it up and end up on their ass, and that would be it.
People, I don't care what kind of car you have no idea how quick a super bike is.
Yeah.
I don't care,
Yeah.
you got a Lambo or now a Tesla or whatever. You get to me, the leader bikes, they got to be so fast, and I'm a physically big guy. They
Hmm.
just weren't fun. It's like,
Right.
look, this thing is designed for Danny Pedrosa, right? If you're more than 5'8", it physically hurts to get on this bike. And
Right.
it's so fast. And again, the technology is brilliant, but it's so fast. How do you have fun where the top speed limit is 70 miles an hour and you could do more than that in first gear?
Yeah.
So it's that old thing of it's more fun to ride a slow bike fast than a fast bike slow. And a super bike, a leader bike. And again, there's people who can do it and there's stunters having fun and God bless them. It's all
Yeah.
great. But I think for most people, you're going to have more fun on a slower bike than you would on one of those bikes that you never get to touch the performance of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I mean, I remember, like I said, my dad was working at a Yamaha store and he had a demo bike at home and he said, "Here, why don't you go take it out for a minute or whatever?" And it was a Kawasaki. It was a ZX10, I want to say.
Hmm.
And I was at an intersection, nothing in front of me, waiting for the light to turn green. I'm like, let's just see. And this was, again, I was in my 20s. So, this ended up well, but I just hit it. I was in second gear doing 75 before I even knew what was going on. And that was my
I
education.
I've had two Hayabusas,
Okay.
and I said that now the Busa is a great bike because what they don't talk about, it has unlimited torque, so you could just
Hmm.
cruise mid range torque and love it. But I
Yeah.
said, when you open the throttle on a Busa, it doesn't accelerate. It sucks the world in towards you. It's the strangest phenomenon to be on something. It's like, woof, you like you're in a video game. It was just
Wow.
like, oh my God, what
Yeah.
and just an incredible bike. But there's nothing like the acceleration of that or the ZX. I think they're up to ZX12 now, whatever. Those two in particular, because they're these big 4-cylinder high horsepower torque monsters. And
Yeah.
yeah, they suck the world in toward you. It's amazing.
Yeah. I gained a lot of respect for those bikes real fast. And I was like, I don't even want to ride these anymore because I know what's going to happen. So
Hmm.
it's been a while, but, well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about motorcycle wise that we talked about? Anything, any subject
Well,
that we
you
didn't
listen,
catch?
your last topic is what I wish people would understand, that we're all riding. So
Yeah.
if you're on a road glide, just keep in mind that that person on the Grom is having as much fun as you.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
If you're on a Gixxer, and you're killing the canyon, the guy on the Japanese cruiser is having as much fun as you. Like it's all riding, So
Yeah.
that's to me that would be the thing, and try something different. If you never know. Now we have those three wheelers, and that's a whole different thing. The
Oh yeah.
slingshots and the Can-Ams. And again, the customized ones. I see some customized slingshots. I'm like, man, that thing is badass. It
Yeah.
ain't for me, but it's beautiful, so good for
You can
you.
respect it. Yeah,
And
you
then
can
there's
respect
that
it.
that argument. Is that a motorcycle? I don't know. I think the Can-Am is more of a motorcycle than the slingshot, because the slingshot you're
Right.
sitting in it like a car. The
Yeah.
Can-Am, you're sitting on it like a motorcycle. But
Yeah.
for the people who love them, have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think.
scooters are another group. I think one day I'm going to get one of those big scooters, those big 600cc scooters
Oh
or
yeah, the
whatever.
Silver Wings, I think, or
I
I think the
Yeah, or
Honda
the
Silver Wing.
Bergman,
Yeah.
the Bergman.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
I was on the freeway once and I got passed by a scooter. And I was like, what in the hell was that? And I raced to catch up. It was a Suzuki Bergman. And I was at the dealer, and the dealer said, oh, yeah, man, those things do 100 miles an hour all day long. I was like, wow.
That's insane.
And
That's
apparently
insane.
In Europe, they use them all the time. People get them as commuter vehicles because they have a trunk under the seat. And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
you don't have to shift. It's still a scooter. You just turn the throttle and go. And apparently they're hugely popular everywhere else in the world but the States.
Yeah. Well, that sounds about right for the U.S. because to quote your comedy special, "Stupid don't get tired," and unfortunately, we're not the smartest bunch in the world
Well,
sometimes.
what would be fun is getting a Bergman scooter and then just racing past someone on a motorcycle. And they're like, son of a bitch, that
just
was
a
a
just a,
scooter.
a
Just
big
wave
wave,
at
big
them,
thumbs up, big
wave at them
smile.
as you pass by and leave them behind.
Yeah. Well, Alonzo, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed the conversation. How can people, if they want to get in touch with you or see some of the comedy, how can they do that?
AlonzoBodden.com is the central website where everything's connected. I have a YouTube channel, Alonzo Bodden, Bodden, and ZoFunny, ZoFunny on Instagram. So I'm out there. If you just Google Comic Alonzo, you're going to get me or Christella Alonzo. And I'm much taller than Christella. You could tell us. You could tell us.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
All right, man. Take care.
You too.